This is my case study module 16 for EDL 850. After reading through the scenario about Ms. Walker and the email and the website that had been created and sent to her, there were quite a few problems that actually were brought to light. Some of them related to that particular instance, and some of them seemed to be underlying issues that would also need to be addressed. So beginning with what we know that Ms. Walker received an unidentified email. The sender has not been identified in any manner other than just suspicion. A website was created that criticized Ms. Walker's personal behaviors as well as her classroom expectations and classroom management skills. Vulgar language and the specific comment, "Who wants Ms. Walker to disappear?" were utilized within that blog, and Ms. Walker perceived those to be a threat. So things that we would need to find out. Ideally, the administrator would need to know who the author of the website and the email were before actions could be taken. The administration will also need to be made aware of any specific instances that could have occurred prior to that email being sent, things that might have led up to that occurrence. And then finally, the administration will also need to consult the current technology agreements, the ones that are signed by students, parents, staff members, and that way we would also know about any violations that would align with those contracts. Looking at the problems, I saw three main problems that would need to be addressed, some more quickly than others, but I feel like all three are very important to maintaining successful relationships and student success in the classroom. First of all, if Ms. Walker's been provided strategies to increase her effectiveness with students and she has chosen not to implement those, I feel like there needs to be a conversation and possibly even an improvement plan to ensure that these strategies are being utilized and those students are getting the most successful learning experience that is possible when they're in that classroom. The disrespect to the staff member, regardless of whether or not their accusations were accurate or inaccurate, we've got to discuss expectations for that communication between a student and a staff member, as well as students and their peers regarding a staff member. We want this to be an appropriate communication. We also would like there to be some mutual respect, which is obviously lacking in this situation. And the final line of "Who wants Ms. Walker to disappear?" we need to address how severe statements like that have to be taken in the time that we live in. And then finally, although there's no concrete evidence, Ms. Walker's already began to make accusations as to who could be to blame for this email and the blog. So I think we need to be very cautious with her accusations being made publicly known and shared with others until there's evidence to support those accusations. So if I was the administrator, my proposed plan of actions would start with ensuring the safety of Ms. Walker as well as my staff and students. I would contact the local police department and ensure that they're aware of the situation, and I would also ensure that I communicated that perception of danger that Ms. Walker was sharing with me that evening. I would meet with the building SRO. I would want to make sure that the proper measures were being taken to ensure Ms. Walker's safety when she was on school premises. And then to go hand in hand with that, we would also be wanting to make sure that our students were safe while they were in our building as well. So things like securing the perimeter, just making sure that all those doors are locked, ensuring that backpacks are not being taken into the classroom, and even as far as making sure that we're watching student attendance. If a student perhaps wasn't here during first block and shows up during second block, or maybe is unaccounted for between classes, those kinds of things we would want to make sure were well documented. We would want to provide intense support for those classroom management modifications that need to occur with Ms. Walker. This, of course, is probably not going to be the first conversation that I have with her. However, I do feel like it's a critical part of how we got to this place, and this provides a great opportunity to look further into this. So I would want to discuss with Ms. Walker the need for a classroom that allows for that mutual respect to the students and from the students. I would want to provide the encouragement that as her administrator, I was there to make sure that she had all the supports necessary so that she could be successful in changing that classroom climate. I would want to make sure that I was personally present in the classroom. Of course, if we're concerned about the safety of our students, then I would be working with mentor teachers, others on the administration team to ensure that somebody could provide that face-to-face support, especially during that class period where those students tend to be struggling with showing the respect, I would assume that that would be the one that she has the greatest amount of difficulty with. So we would want to make sure to get a second set of hands and eyes and ears in that room. And then I'd make sure that I provide and follow through for this implementation. I don't want this to be a single conversation, but rather an ongoing process to make sure that we improve that experience for not only Ms. Walker, but also for every student that she is impacting as well. And one of the most critical pieces of the action plan would be to determine that sender of the email. During the meeting with the local police department discussing Ms. Walker's concerns, I would also discuss options for a cyber investigation. Provided that there were the necessary resources in that police department, we would want to make sure that we help that process go as smoothly as possible to ensure that we were able to track down any information that we could. I would also meet with the building IT director. We would want to look at options for a district investigation, providing them with email, website, the computer, and any other necessary information so that that process could be as successful as possible as well. And then I'd also want to make sure that we did not accuse any individual or group of students without adequate evidence. If they were responsible for those actions, then questioning would obviously be in alignment. However, if this is just an accusation because of a bad day in class or somebody who tends to be a little rambunctious, we don't want to go and damage somebody's name or possibly options beyond this classroom by making accusations prematurely. So taking a firm but evidence-based stance while ensuring the safety and learning of all students promotes the academic success and personal well-being of all students. And I feel like I'm doing this by ensuring the students and the staff of their safety. It's going to allow academics to be the primary focus of all those present in the classroom. Addressing the classroom management that's in place by Ms. Walker, I feel like that can increase the effectiveness of her teaching, her impact on students on a daily basis, and can work to prevent similar situations occurring in the future. And then seeking insight from the student body as a whole, that will allow us to gather any insights that students may have. However, we would be refraining from unjustly accusing anyone in particular of something that they could possibly not be guilty of because we don't have evidence. Once evidence was collected, then questioning could begin at that point, but I would not want to get the cart before the horse, so to speak, and unjustly accuse any of our students. So thoughts that ran through my head while reading this through. First of all, with recent situations, obviously we can never be too careful. I would much rather err on the side of caution than to be careless and allow something to happen while I knew that there was a threat in place. We always have to, question what was the blogger thinking? Were they joking? Were they frustrated? Or are they being very serious? And at this point, without a psychological background, we are just guessing at what the intentions and the thoughts were of this person, and we can't even identify this person at this time. And then finally, my big question was, what do I, as the administrator, do to keep my kids safe, my students, my staff, anyone in my care? I feel like this is really my tough question. I can get back a day of instruction. I can get back some lost staff meeting time. However, if my students, my staff are not safe, that is time that I cannot get back. So feelings, first of all, I questioned whether or not this was just an overreaction by Ms. Walker. Was she, a new teacher? Maybe she didn't see anything wrong with the way that she taught or managed her classroom, and therefore she was kind of caught off guard by this and surprised, so just more flustered than truly threatened. Next, the severity cannot be overlooked. The statement, regardless of truth of that statement, we can't be too lax in how we approach that. But at the same time, from a district standpoint, I also know that we can't always react to every threat with the same level of severity. So finally, that kind of brings me to that rational reasoning that we have to put in place to ensure that we're losing instruction time when appropriate to ensure the safety of students, but not unnecessarily. Looking at the values that I feel like I'm responsible for in this case, I feel like I'm responsible for the safety and well-being of my staff and students. I'm responsible for the quality of learning that's occurring in the classroom. and I'm responsible for ensuring that my students understand the consequences of their actions, molding them into productive citizens as well as responsible digital citizens. So working to promote that student success through integrity, fairness, and ethical manners. I would promote student success of every student by protecting students from the unnecessary accusations, ensuring that they have the tools and the environment to be productive in the classroom. And I feel like that's where the classroom management strategies for our teachers fall in as well. And then providing clear expectations for respect, citizenship, as well as the digital citizenship. I would need to adhere to the ethical principles and professional norms by showing respect to staff and students, seeking out the truth in the situation before accusations were made, and finally responding in a rational but unwavering manner. My personal and professional code of ethics would be demonstrated by ensuring the safety and well-being of all students and staff members, treating my students with respect and not unjustly accusing any students of committing an act until I had sufficient evidence, and then promoting the continued success of staff members by providing the needed supports to successfully manage their classrooms. Overall, this would obviously not be an ideal situation for any administrator to be in, and yet I feel like with some digging and a little bit of time to ensure that the right persons were identified in this situation, I feel that this situation can be handled much better, much more respectfully, and ultimately build relationships rather than destroying them within the building. Thank you so much for listening.